What's up, guys? This is Panic Knife here with theawfulgamer.com, and I'm testing out Sniper DPS in patch 2.0 by parsing on the public test server, and it should be kind of interesting. What I've heard from a lot of people is that Marksman is going to be a lot more viable in 2.0, and a lot of people have even argued that with Marksman plus Alacrity, you're going to end up being more effective than a Lethality Sniper. So I wanted to jump on PTS where I can really, sort of remove variables just because of the fact that you get free gear and test out the different specs. And it's going to be limited a little bit by the fact that I'm not a genius at the marksman rotation anymore, but I definitely wanted to check it out. So this is the build that I came up with for a max Alacrity build. The Alacrity obviously has been redesigned with patch 2.0, so it now decreases the global cooldown and increases energy regeneration. So that should make it so that the biggest limiting factors with the typical marksman rotation were that you'd burn through your energy and that you would have too long of cooldowns and the filler abilities weren't that strong. So that is a good news for anybody who wanted to be a marksman sniper. A lot of people don't like the rotation for lethality, so you should be able to have a more viable character at this point. But I will test out the numbers, just like I said, limiting the differences between the specs and all that sort of stuff, and we'll test it out. So this is the gear I decided to pick out for an Alacrity build, if you will. Alacrity is going to be on my both my implants. It's going to be on my head, gloves, and I believe I have another piece on there, but I'm not entirely sure. The gear is basically I kind of sacrificed Surge for Alacrity. I increased the power quite a bit. Power is at 1284 with my Ricotta Stim and with fully buffed. And my primary damage there, as you can see, is 1651, which we would kill for on live servers. But that's just how this gear goes. It's going to be a pretty high cutting build. It's about 200 higher than I have on live servers. But this gear is all unaugmented because I'm not wasting my time doing that stuff. So I'm going to compare the different specs in this video. You'll also probably see that my marksman rotation will have some issues, but it's going to give you a pretty good baseline. I don't have that many issues. I've been practicing for about an hour, so that's how it goes. Also, I have my War Hero relics on here too. So basically, this is the spec that you're going to go into. I changed the typical marksman build into. I added the points to Alacrity there. Now that Alacrity is more useful, this might arguably be a little bit better than the explosive engineering over here. So I decided to put the 2 points into there. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard marksman build. Now the additions to the tree are mostly towards the top of the tree. Over here, you'll see that you've got a bunch of different abilities here. Some of these aren't going to affect us here in this DPS test here, but debilitating shots, which it increases the trauma duration of shatter shot by 6 seconds. It also slows. Leg shot slows the people basically 70% for 3 more seconds. Portable bunkers, which increases the duration of entrench. These are just things you have to get to 36, which is the new top of the tree number. So you definitely want sniper volley if you're going to be a pure marksman sniper. So I had to get these 4 here. Portable bunker, entrench, headshot, which increases the crit chance of takedown in series of shots, which is actually really good. Muzzle fluting, which reduces the energy cost of your next 2 snipes by 5. I don't use snipe all that much. That's, I think, a pretty good policy for a marksman sniper. You don't really want to use snipe, just because you use it as a filler, and when you don't have explosive probe or corrosive dart is already it's already ticking on there, and you don't really have anything else to use. You use that. The Imperial Assassin increases the crit chance of, or the crit damage dealt, so it increases the surge on series of shots, takedown, and follow through by 30%. That's a pretty good one. Another Siege Bunker is another entrench ability, but the nice one here is recoil control, which I don't think was on the live servers. I might be wrong on that just because I haven't run Marksman in a long time, but it instantly finishes the cooldown on follow through when you crit on a ambush or on a series of shots. So that is really nice. It will increase your DPS quite a bit if I'm not mistaken. So without further ado, I have a Mox parser going on the other screen here, and unfortunately I can't share that with you on the screen just because of the fact that Fraps only records the stuff that's on the game screen, but I will let you know as soon as I do how this parses. So let's go. Open with Shatter Shot, just because of the fact that this build is very proc based anyway, and you know, it seems like a good idea. So I've just popped my Adrenal. Gonna go with Sniper Volley. Get a little lag on the dummy here, and that's just because of the fact that there's a lot of people using it and there's a lot of people on fleet. So that is pretty much how you go. So I'm working through the rotation. The rotation is pretty simple. You're going to use series of shots as much as you can. You're going to use ambush as much as you can. And then in between those, you're going to use things like explosive probe, snipe if you have to. You'll use corrosive dart if it's not on already. So I'll use it during the next lull here, just because it just ticked away. So once that's back on there, continue with sniping, continue with explosive probe, and then you get back into your main rotation. So I'm looking at the parse right now, and the parse at this moment is at 2040. So that is not too bad. Obviously, I have some issues with my rotation just because I'm not a genius at marksman, but obviously a lot of people would kill for that rotation and that, or not that rotation, but that DPS number on live servers if they're running marksman. So already you can see that it is a lot more viable. If you watch my energy bar, it never gets below 70. I don't know exactly what they changed, but energy regeneration in 2.0 is a lot better than it used to be. I don't have the same kind of issues that I used to have with my rotation here on the PTS that I did in the live server. You know, even on my lethality sniper, which it has pretty decent crit, my sniper I believe has something to the effect of maybe 35% crit on live servers. I still have some issues sometimes with energy remanagement, and I've gone as high as 38%, and I've still had the same kind of issues. So I think that that's a really important thing with sniping, is the fact that you're able to manage your energy. I haven't had to resort to a rifle shot once during this whole rotation, and that used to be a big issue with marksman sniping. If you didn't, you know, throw rifle shots in there every once in a while as a filler, you were going to end up having issues with your energy management. I'm not even cresting, you know, 60 energy. So this is it's definitely a welcome change, and it's kind of interesting. I think that this build will be viable in 2.0, and it'll be interesting to watch. I'm kind of curious to see how the numbers come out for somebody who's a little bit better than me, but it stayed about the same. It stayed about 2040 throughout the entire time there. So that is how I did with the Alac gear, which is this build right here, like you said, or like you saw. And I will throw on, just for, you know, testing sake, some more power generated gear. So this gear is something that it's power surge more than power Alac. I came up with it to test out my lethality sniper, my original, you know, the skill build. So let's test that as well. The power is a little bit lower. I'm not exactly sure why. I think there might be one or two pieces that I need to change it around. I think it might be because I used more accuracy on this build. So actually, you know what? Let's test this with the power on the earpieces right there, or the implants right there, just because I want to keep the base damage about the same. So let's open up there, and let's go. Should be interesting to test. Actually, when I had been testing this before on my own, before I started filming the video, I had been using the accuracy earpieces there, just because of the fact that this build relies on those earpieces to get the accuracy that I typically want, which is I typically want 98% accuracy, just because you don't want to be missing, especially during, you know, your big money abilities. That'll kill your DPS if you don't, you know, hit on your series of shots, or you miss on your ambush or something like that. That's just gonna murder your DPS. Now, looking at this with this gear, it's actually so far slightly higher. So it's at okay, it's at 2053 right now. So it's arguable. Like I did add a little bit, obviously, Alacrity a little bit more than I had before, just because of the fact that that those pieces had power on them. I don't know that the Alacrity is making that huge of an issue. Okay, we're up to 2080. So, you know, you could argue that maybe the power surge versus alacrity is a wash, or maybe you might even want the surge, because obviously my surge is 5% higher here. So that is an interesting little test. I would say that the higher surge build with only 4% alacrity, which is still a lot higher than you'd normally have, 144 rating. These two pieces are the only two pieces of alacrity I have on there, but those increased, or with the additional surge, that increased DPS quite a bit. So, well, I mean, 40 DPS, but that is a bit, quite a bit of DPS if you really think about it. So, let's go ahead and norm this test by testing out lethality. Let's see which one is the higher spec. Alright, so let's check out our lethality build. Now this is very similar. They didn't change the bottom of the trees very much on a lethality sniper. So right off the bat you're going to see that everything up to about here is all the same as you normally would get. Now this is the first change, which you'll have to get to the next level, is augmented shields. You have the decision whether you want counter strike, which is more of a PvP ability. Countermeasures is a 50 or 100% chance to remove all movement impairing effects. You're not going to use that very much in ops. This is mostly a PvP, or PvE rather, centered video. So I'm going to go ahead and spec into augmented shields, which obviously is not going to affect my parsing at all. Increases the damage absorbed by shield probe by 30%, which will help on damage burn phases, stuff like on TFB on the Dread Guards when you have that chain lightning thing come out. That will help quite a bit. The next level, you've got devouring microbes, which is pretty standard already. You've got lingering toxins, which obviously is an ability you already have, and toxic regulators, which is an awesome ability that your periodic damaging effects don't tick on targets affected by any of your sleep abilities. That will be quite useful in case you screw up on corrosive grenade or something like that. Now, this is just an ability I spec'd into because of the fact that you have to get to 36 to get your weakening blast, which is obviously a huge part of your lethality rotation. Corrosive mine, which will, it's basically when you use evasion, you're going to have some damage to go out to bosses around you, and this is the big one here on for a lethality build, which is lethal takedown. Every time your Cull crits, it has a 45% chance to trigger lethal takedown, which finishes the cooldown on takedown, which is your sub 30 ability, and lets you use it at any health level. That is huge for your DPS. So the weakening blast is your other little thing here. Obviously you're going to need that. So that is the build. Now let's look at the stats on here. It's about the same all across the board. There's no real huge changes from speccing into lethality. Like I said, I left on these earpieces here that add a little bit of alacrity, and we're going to test this out right here with the dummy here. So without further ado, give me just 1 second to set up my quick bar, and then we will go. Alright, so pretty much the same deal. Mox is off screen. I use a very standard lethality rotation, and here we go. Open with Shatter Shot, just because, whatever. Run through my dots, and Cull. So that's pretty much what your rotation's going to be, right? It's you're going to, except the biggest difference, like I said, is that you're going to be able to use takedown a lot. So that's pretty much it. Look at that. Let's take a look at Mox, and we're doing 2300. So maybe some of this is the fact that my rotation is a little bit screwy on Marksman, but I think that the additional ability to use takedown like all the time is going to end up being a huge... Actually, I just screwed up my rotation there, of course, because that's what happens. But that's going to end up being a huge boon. If you were able to get your 4-piece set bonus that decreases the energy consumption of takedown, which that's going to be even more critical right now because of the fact that you're going to be using it all the time. That is huge. I mean, I'm looking at my parse still. It's still over 2300. So you're looking at maybe let's just go ahead and give you an extra 100 DPS on Marksman, just because of the fact that maybe some of it's my skill level of it. I will fully allow for that possibility. But just looking at it, even so, you're still looking at about 100 and 120 or so additional DPS for somebody who's using Marksman over, or lethality over Marksman. Additionally, got to think about this. When you're using lethality, you have dots. obviously. That's what the entire build is based on. So what we're looking at here is on fights where there's a lot of movement. So let's say the tanks on Nightmare AC, let's say the Dread Guards in TFB or TFB himself. You're not going to be able to sit there and cover and just plunk away at the thing like I am with the dummy here. So with lethality, you'll be up and moving, which is, you know, standard. Like most DPS classes have to do that, so this is nothing new. When you have this in a lethality spec, you've got the dots going the entire time. You can move around and not lose all DPS. With Marksman, you'll have Corrosive Dart if you remember to put it on there as a filler. But for the most part, you're not going to have a whole lot of sustained DPS when you're moving. With lethality, you can dot something up and run. You know, it's not the end of the world if you're not actively culling, if you're not actively, hitting them with, any other kind of abilities, because you've still got that those dots on them. So I would think that when 2.0 rolls around, you're still going to see, in terms of operations, you're going to still see most people are going to use lethality if they're a sniper, just because of the fact that it is slightly higher DPS as of right now, especially if you spec into lethal takedown, but also because of the fact that, sustained DPS wise, dot classes are typically going to be better than burst classes. Now, there are certain fights where burst classes are going to be good, especially in fights where you're pretty stationary. But looking at the parse right now, 2350. So, I mean, this class is, right now, for me anyway, still doing a higher DPS than Marksman. Now, that, again, may be partially because of the fact that I don't have a great Marksman rotation, but I don't think it's that far off, and quite frankly, you can see the difference, and the fact that you have dots versus the fact that you'd have to hit your burst rotation perfectly and stay perfectly still with the Marksman rotation tells me that the lethality is going to still be the spec du jour for 2.0. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys learned a little something, and of course this will probably all change when they update PTS again, but for right now, that is what it's looking like. Anyway, with theawfulgamer.com, this is your boy Panic Knife. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have a good night.